Good morning. Good morning. I'm gonna try and make it through this video. My throat has been a little scratchy today. I don't know if it's my allergies or what, but anyway. So good morning. Welcome. If you are new, welcome back. If you are returning, I am working on the reading through the Bible, and I'm just coming on here every day or almost every day and trying to read for like 30 minutes, give or take a few minutes. And I just want to be able to be here so that in case you guys are just wanting to hear the word or just haven't been able to just make the time, sometimes it gets hard. It gets hard. Things happen, days go by, and you don't realize, oh my gosh, I didn't read the Bible today. I didn't do this. I didn't do that. So, I like to come on for about 30 minutes. That way it's like an audio book. You can listen while you're getting ready for work, while you're cooking, cleaning, driving, whatever the case may be. And that way you get your 30 minutes in, you hear the word, and you're able to just kind of listen and just go through it with me. But I'm going to go ahead and get started. I did find this book. It's called Decree a Thing and It Shall Be Established, which is Job 22 and 28. And I've had it in my library for a while, and I just wanted to go ahead. It has like little prayers, and the first one is prayer of dedication. I'm just going to go ahead and read it here at the beginning, and then I'll get into the word right after that. So it's, I dedicate myself to you this day in spirit, soul, and body. Convict me of any ways in my thoughts, words, or deeds that have been displeasing to you. I ask for cleansing from all sin according to your word that promises that if I confess my sin, then you will be faithful to forgive me and to cleanse me from all righteousness. As I confess and decree your word, may your Holy Spirit help me to be a passionate worshiper, a lover of truth, and a faithful child who brings pleasure to your righteous heart. May I experience spiritual strengthening through the power of your word. For your word does not return void, but accomplishes everything it is sent to do. Grant upon me a spirit of wisdom and of revelation in the knowledge of Christ for the glory of your name and kingdom. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. And I might just add one of these every morning before I start reading, or every time before I start reading. So we ended at Numbers 33, and I believe we're going to finish Numbers today because there's only a few chapters, and I think we'll be able to make it through Numbers, and then I can get going into Deuteronomy. So we are, what's that, 5 chapters? We're 4 chapters in, going into the 5th chapter. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. I do have quite a few appointments today, so I don't want to be late. All right, so Numbers chapter 33. And if you are new, welcome. If you're returning, welcome back. If you haven't already, be sure to follow and like, and any hearts and gifts you give, I thank you so much. I appreciate each and every one of them. I'll be reading, so if you send me something or if you like, I can't see it unless I just so happen to be looking up at that moment. So I just want to thank you in advance, and I do repost these over on YouTube after I am done. So if you want to watch the replay, be sure to check it out. All right, let's get started. These were the stages by which the Israelites marched when they left the land of Egypt, according to their military units under the leadership of Moses and Aaron. Moses recorded the points of departure for each stage of the march at the Lord's command. These are the stages of their march according to their points of departure. They marched from Rameses on the 15th day of the first month. On the day after the Passover, the Israelites went out defiantly in the sight of all the Egyptians, while the Egyptians were burying their oldest males, whom the Lord had killed. The Lord also executed judgments against their gods. The Israelites marched from Rameses, and they camped in Succoth. They marched from Succoth and encamped at Etham, on the edge of the desert. They marched from Etham and turned back to Pi-hahiroth, which faces Baal-Zephon, and they camped before Migdol. They marched from Pi Hahiroth, and they crossed through the sea toward the desert. Then they traveled 3 days in the Etham desert, and they camped at Marah. They marched from Marah and arrived at Elam. At Elam there were 12 springs of water and 70 palm trees, and they camped there. They marched from Elam and camped by the Reed Sea. They marched from the Reed Sea and camped in the Sin Desert. They marched from the Sin Desert and camped at Dophkah. They marched from Dophkah and camped at Alush. They marched from Alush and camped at Rephidim. Where there was no water for the people to drink. They marched from Rephidim and camped at the Sinai Desert. They marched from the Sinai Desert and camped at Kibroth Hattaavah. They marched from Kibroth Hattaavah and camped at Hazeroth. They marched from Hazeroth and camped at Rithmah. They marched from Rithmah and camped at Rimmon Perez. They marched from Rimmon Perez and camped at Libnah. They marched from Libnah and camped at Rissa. They marched from Rissa and camped at Kehelatha. They marched from Kehelatha and camped at Mount Shepher. They marched from Mount Shepher and camped at Harada. They marched from Harada and camped at Machpelah. They marched from Machpelah and camped at Tahath. They marched from Tahath and camped at Terah. They marched from Terah and camped at Mithka. They marched from Mithka and camped at Hashmonah. They marched from Hashmonah and camped at Moseroth. They marched from Moseroth and camped at Ben Jacan. They marched from Ben Jacan and camped at Hor Hagadad. They marched from Hor Hagadad and camped at Jotbatha. They marched from Jotbatha and camped at Abranah. They marched from Abranah and camped at Ezion Geber. They marched from Ezion Geber and camped at the Zin Desert, that is Kadesh. They marched from Kadesh and camped at Mount Hor, on the edge of the land of Edom. Aaron the priest ascended Mount Hor at the Lord's command, and he died there in the 40th year on the first day of the 5th month, after the Israelites left the land of Egypt. Aaron was 123 years old when he died on Mount Hor. The Canaanite king of Arad, who ruled in the arid southern plain in the land of Canaan, heard of the Israelites coming. They marched from Mount Hor and camped at Zalmanah. They marched from Zalmanah and camped at Punan. They marched from Punan and camped at Obith. They marched from Obith and camped at Abiram in the territory of Moab. They marched from Iyim and camped at Dibon Gad. They marched from Dibon Gad and camped at Almon Deblathaim. They marched from Almon Deblathaim and camped at the Abiram Mountains in front of Nebo. They marched from the Abiram Mountains and camped in the plains of Moab by the Jordan across from Jericho. They camped by the Jordan from Beth Jeshemoth to Abel Shittim in the plains of Moab. The Lord spoke to Moses on the plains of Moab by the Jordan across from Jericho. Speak to the Israelites and say to them, when you cross the Jordan into the land of Canaan, you will drive out all the inhabitants of the land before you. You will destroy all their carved figures. You will also destroy all their cast images. You will eliminate all their shrines. You will take possession of the land and live in it, because I've given the land to you to possess. You will divide up the land by lot according to your clans. To the large you will make its inheritance large, and to the small you will make its inheritance small. To whomever the lot falls, that place will be his. You will inherit land according to your ancestral tribes. But if you don't drive out the inhabitants of the land before you, then those you allow to remain will prick your eyes and be thorns in your side. They will harass you in the land in which you are living. Then what I intended to do to them, I'll do to you. The Lord said to Moses, command the Israelites and say to them, when you enter the land of Canaan, this is the land that will fall to you as an inheritance. The land of Canaan according to its boundaries. Your southern boundary extends from the Zin Desert alongside Edom. Your southern border extends from the edge of the Dead Sea on the east. Your border will turn south at the ascent of Akrabim and cross towards Zin. Its limit will be south of Kadesh Barnea. It will go out to Hazar Adar and cross toward Asmon. The border will then turn from Asmon to the Egypt ravine. Its limits will be at the Mediterranean Sea. Your western border will be the Mediterranean Sea. This will be your western border. This will be your northern border. From the Mediterranean Sea, you will mark out your boundary to Mount Hor. From Mount Hor, you will mark out your boundary to Leben Hamath. The limit of the border will be Zedad. The border will go out to Ziphron. Its limit will be Hazar Enan. This will be your northern border. You will mark out your eastern border from Hazar Enan to Shephem. The border will descend from Shephem to Riblah on the east side of Ain. The border will go down and meet the eastern slope of the Galilee Sea. The border will descend to the Jordan. Its limit will be the Dead Sea. This will be your land with its borders all around. Moses commanded the Israelites, this is a land that you will inherit by lot, which the Lord has commanded to give to the 9.5 tribes, because the tribe of Reuben by their households, and the tribe of Gad by their households, and half the tribe of Manasseh have taken their inheritance. The 2.5 tribes have taken their inheritance across the Jordan at Jericho towards the east. The Lord spoke to Moses, these are the names of the men who will assign the inheritance of the land. Eleazar the priest and Joshua Nun's son. You will also take one chief from each tribe to apportion the land. These are the names of the men. From the tribe of Judah, Caleb, Jephunneh's son. From the tribe of the Simeonites, Shemuel, Amihud's son. From the tribe of Benjamin, Eladad, Chislon's son. From the tribe of the Danites, a chief, Buki, Jogli's son. From Joseph's descendants and of the tribe of the Manassites, a chief, Haniel, Ephad's son. And from the tribe of the Ephraimites, a chief, Kemuel, Siftan's son. From the tribe of the Zebulunites, a chief, Elzaphan, Parnach's son. From the tribe of the Issacharites, a chief, Paltiel, Azan's son. From the tribe of the Asherites, a chief, Ahihud, Shalomi's son. From the tribe of the Naphtalites, a chief, Pedahel, Amihud's son. These are the ones whom the Lord commanded to assign the inheritance of the Israelite in the land of Canaan. The Lord spoke to Moses in the Moab plains by the Jordan across from Jericho. Command the Israelites that they give cities from their inherited property to the Levites in which to live. You will also give the Levites pasture around the cities. The cities will be theirs in which to live. Their pastures for their cattle, their possessions, and all their animals. The pastures of the cities that you must give to the Levites will extend from the wall of the city outward for 1,500 feet in all directions. You will measure outside the city on the east side 3,000 feet, on the south side 3,000 feet, on the west side 3,000 feet, and on the north side 3,000 feet, with the city in the middle. These will be their cities' pastures. 6 of the cities that you give to the Levites will be refuge cities. You will allow the person who kills someone to flee there. In addition to these, you will give them 42 cities. All the cities that you give the Levites will total 48, along with the pastures. As for the cities that you give from the property of the Israelites, you will take more from the larger tribes and less from the smaller. Each in proportion to its inheritance will give cities to the Levites. I need a drink here. The Lord spoke to Moses. Speak to the Israelites and say to them, when you cross the Jordan into the land of Canaan, identify for yourselves cities to be refuge cities where a person who kills someone by accident may flee. The cities will be for you a place of refuge from the close relative of the dead. The person who killed someone may not be put to death until he stands before the community for judgment. You will establish 6 refuge cities for yourselves. You will establish 3 cities across the Jordan and 3 cities in the land of Canaan. They will be the refuge cities. These 6 cities will be refuge for Israelites, immigrants, and temporary residents as a place to flee for anyone who kills a person by accident. But if someone strikes a person with an iron object and he decides he is a murderer, but if someone strikes a person with an iron object and he dies, he is a murderer. The murderer must definitely be put to death. If someone strikes another with a stone in hand that could cause death and he dies, he is a murderer. The murderer must definitely be put to death. Or if someone strikes with a wood object in hand that could cause death, he is a murderer. The murderer must definitely be put to death. The close relative responsible for the blood of the dead is the one who will put the murderer to death. When he meets him, he will execute him. If in hatred someone hits another or throws something at him with premeditation, he will be put to death. Or if in hostility someone strikes another with his hand and he dies, the one who struck is a murderer, and he will be put to death. The close relative will put the murderer to death when he meets him. But if suddenly and without hostility someone hits another or throws any object at him without premeditation, or accidentally drops any stone on him that could cause death and he dies, even though they weren't enemies and no evil was intended, then the community must come to a verdict between the killer and the close relative in accordance with these case laws. The community will protect the killer from the hand of the close relative and return him to the refuge city where he fled. He will live there until the death of the high priest who was anointed with holy oil. But if the killer ever goes outside the boundaries of the refuge city where he fled, and the close relative finds him outside the boundary of his refuge city and kills him, he will not be held responsible for his blood. The killer must live in the refuge city until the high priest dies. After the high priest's death, the killer may return to the land he owns. These will be the regulations and case laws for all time in all your settlements. Anyone who kills another will be executed on the evidence of witnesses, but one witness alone cannot testify against a person for a death sentence. You may not accept a ransom for the life of a killer who is guilty of a capital crime, for he must definitely be put to death. You may not accept a ransom for someone who has fled to his refuge city so that he can return and live in the land before the priest's death. You may not pollute the land in which you live, for the blood pollutes the land. There can be no recovery for the land from the blood that is shed in it, except by the blood of the one who shed it. You will not make the land in which you live unclean, the land in the middle of which I reside, for I, the Lord, reside among the Israelites. The leaders of the household of the clans of Gilead, Machir's son, and Manasseh's grandson of Joseph's clans, approached and spoke before Moses and the chiefs, who were the leaders of the Israelite households. They said, "The Lord commanded my master to give the land as an inheritance by lot to the Israelites. But my master was also commanded by the Lord to give the inheritance of Zelophehad, our brother, to his daughters. If they are married to someone from another Israelite tribe, their inheritance will be taken away from our household and given to another tribe into which they marry. Then it will be taken away from the lot of our inheritance." At the Israelite Jubilee, their inheritance will be added to the inheritance of the tribe into which they married. Then their inheritance will be taken away from the inheritance of our ancestral tribe. Then Moses commanded the Israelites according to the Lord's word. The tribe of Joseph's descendants are correct in what they're saying. This is the word the Lord commands to Zelophehad's daughters. They may marry whomever seems best to them, but they may only marry into one of the clans of their ancestral tribe, so that the inheritance of the Israelites doesn't transfer from one tribe to another. The Israelites will retain the tribal inheritance of his ancestral tribe. Every daughter who inherits land from an Israelite tribe must marry into one of the clans of her father's tribe. In this way, each Israelite will own the land of his ancestors. An inheritance of land may not be transferred from one tribe to another, for the Israelite tribes will each retain its own inheritance. Zelophehad's daughters did as the Lord commanded Moses. Mahlah, Tirzah, Hoglah, Milcah, and Noah, Zelophehad's daughters, married their cousins. They married into the clan of Manasseh, Joseph's son. Their inheritance remained in the tribe of their father's clan. These are the commandments and the case laws that the Lord commanded the Israelites through Moses in the plains of Moab by the Jordan across from Jericho. And that ends the book of Numbers. And I know that wasn't a complete half hour, but or maybe it was. I don't know. We'll see. But we made it through the book of Numbers. We are now into the book of Deuteronomy, and I will start that prayerfully tomorrow. That way I can, be consistent. Again, if you haven't, seen my previous lives, or you just want to either listen to it or you got the end of it and you want to hear the whole thing again, I repost them over on YouTube shortly after I finish here. And you can go check them out over there. And if you haven't already, please be sure to follow, subscribe, like, do all the things. And I will be back prayerfully tomorrow. That is it for today. I pray you all have an amazingly blessed day. And until then, be blessed and be the reason someone smiles. Bye.